my peeps. Welcome back to Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. And before I get too carried away, I'd like to take a moment and say thanks for being here and giving this pod a listen. It means a lot to me that you chose to use your precious time and give me and my guest your ears. Now, if after all this awesomeness, you still have the wherewithal, it'd be really cool if you share this with someone who you think would like it, or just subscribe yourself if you already haven't. That'd be dope. And if you want to take a moment and tell me what parts of the show you were passionate about, peeved you off, or just say hi, you can always reach me on Twitter @LikeIkes and via email passionandpeevespodcast@gmail.com. So I come to you having sadly not gone to Disneyland. There was a kerfuffle and I was unable to attend through some clerical errors and whatnot. It happens. On the plus side, though, my mother was generous enough to procure me the funds via gift card, probably the technical way to say that, so that I can in the future and at my own leisure do so and ride cups and whatnot. So if you want to go to Disneyland with your boy, holla at me. Maybe we can make that happen. Speaking of my folks, I did, in fact, get to sit down with my mother and father and my cousin Nick and his partner Jess and have a lovely Indian dinner the other evening, as well as hang out with my folks and go meander around the, what was the name of the place? Lanternman House. I can't, whatever. That place up in Glendale, California, or just outside Glendale. It was lovely, beautiful, and had some kind of fun historical doodads. It was great. Thank you very much for taking me along with you, Mom and Pop. It was great. So as I'm recording this, this is technically my last day of spring break. It's never enough. It's never enough. I always want more. But as people have said, all good things must come to an end, and this was pretty darn good. I didn't use it as well as I'd like, but I never do. However, I'm starting, I find, after talking to my therapist more and being more introspective, that it doesn't always need to be so... I'm not an well-oiled machine. I am not a business that always needs to turn a profit. I'm a human being, and it's great to just not do anything for a while and then just revel and enjoy that, because as I'm saying in these coming weeks, that's not always an option. I am very much going to be quite busy for the next 3 weeks in preparing and then playing in the Pro Tour Seattle Magic the Gathering Championship thingamajiggery-doo. And yeah, so that's going to be exhausting and fun. Wish me luck. In preparation for that, actually, for the first time in I can't remember how long, bought luggage. I now am the proud owner of a carry-on receptacle via Amazon. It'll do the trick and was relatively cheap enough, so that'll work. Now I don't have to have everything on my back, which will be probably better for my body overall. So get to roll that doodad. Be lovely. Speaking of things I love, I've noticed over this week, as I have slowly cleaned up my room, I really do love a medium-sized mess, because it's not so outlandish that you can't do anything about it or takes over your life. But when you want to, it's very doable to clean it up, and then you can notice the the size of your work and its productivity, I guess. So I was cleaning up my desk and all the cards are in my room the other day, and it's just like, oh, there's more space now. This is nice. It didn't take too much time, but it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's nice. Anywho's what's it's. The guest this week was the lovely and magical TANNON GRACE. TANNON is someone who I have now had the privilege of knowing for about a year, as I met him at the regional championship in San Diego last April, so nearly exactly a year, and we kind of hit it off and really got along. He was in coverage, I was a player that did very well, and just in little interactions, slow friendship has been born, and it was lovely to chat with him again and have him come on. So please enjoy the interview. All right, folks, today we have a winner. He was the Bishop Sullivan High School Golf State Champion circa 2002, hasn't drunk a soda in 20 years, and the self-ranked 1999 number one ranked Mario Golf player in the world. It's the one and only TANNON GRACE, everybody!
I feel like I need like pyrotechnics and walking out under a jumbotron right now. This is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Oh, there they are.
So do some finger guns or something, coming out. Oh man, that was a great intro. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So the people gotta know, what's your passion, man?
For my passion, I mean, like lately, if you follow me at all, it's got to be broadcast work, like coverage for Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. So just a lot of that lately. I've been putting a lot of my time and effort into making sure that whatever comes across, whether it be in person or online, since I just did the Arena Championships, is a good product and something that people at home like and that my bosses like, so I can keep doing it.
So I presume that other than some of the games that came later, that this started out as like a byproduct of playing lots of Magic. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that does sound about right. So, yeah. So like,
when did you first get involved with the game of Magic?
I think my first game was probably in 1995. I remember it was somewhere around that time because I was in grade school. I think I was in like 4th or 5th grade, so it'd be about right 95. And at recess, I saw like 2 kids that were a grade ahead of me, but I was like friends with them, and they were like just sitting down and playing with something. So I walk up to see what they were doing, and they were just playing Magic. And I was like, "Oh, what is this?" I still remember the very first card I ever saw, if I remember right, was like Gabrielle Angelfire and then like Sarah Angel, Singer Vampire, stuff like that. And I was like, "Yo, this is cool." I remember we had to hide it from the teachers because I went to private school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so it's like a Catholic school. So they saw like any of the black cards. They were
this is around the time of the Satanic Panic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So for those of you that don't know, Magic the Gathering has a very storied history, and at one point it was very much in the news for a lot of occult imagery, especially like pentagrams on a lot of cards that were then, in the next set. Do you remember that they were removed in the next set? Was that something that kind of stuck out in your memory as a kid?
Yeah, I do, because in particular, a deck that I had that was a black deck got taken from a teacher and never got it back because it had like unholy strength in it, and like it had like hippies and dark rituals and stuff like that. But like they just see this and they're like, oh my god, like this is satanic.
The devil's mark.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, it's just a card game. Like, it's just a math problem. Like,
so we're doing that in Catholic high school. When did you get involved in the kind of competitive scene that you would then later on go to, talk about for a living?
I think so. I took a big break or whatever, like, I didn't play a ton in the 90s. I played a little bit, it was tangentially attached to my life. And then I went over to a friend's house sometime in like late high school, early college. So, early 2000s. And my friend just had Magic cards in his room. I was like, yo, I used to play this game. And so
first
then
off, nerd.
Yeah.
Right, so what are these doing here?
Yeah, and then we go over to like our LGS, there's a place called Little Wars, and it's just full of people playing Magic. And I'm a giant nerd at the time. Like I would do athletic stuff too, or whatever, blah blah blah. But I like this kind of thing.
Golf and I just definitely are the nerds of sports, to be sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just started playing there a little bit, and then the group of friends that I like got in with, I just didn't realize were all the best players in the state of like Louisiana. And so I just got good really fast without realizing it, because you have to if you want to win a game against these guys. And then I'll never forget this one. I'm just like, hey, so I live I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They're like, hey, we're going to a tournament next weekend in Houston, Texas. It's about a 4-hour drive. They're like, we're going to a PTQ. Do you want to go? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to go. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. And then I'm just like, like we figured it all out. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, what's a PTQ?
I heard friends going to a thing, and I was like, I'm there.
Yeah. You want to know the other funny part of the story? I won that,
please.
Obviously.
Yeah. The story of every hero just clumsily falls into victory.
Yep. And then so I made my first Pro Tour, and then it kind of went on from that. As for like the broadcast side of it, that kind of just like, so I have literally no background in it. Like I have a business degree from LSU. You know what I mean? Like I don't have, I wasn't part of like a troop or anything growing up. I never did any of like the, the exercises that people would do growing up, or, it's no stand
You weren't
up.
standing in a mirror just going, ha, 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 ha.
No, I mean, sometimes right before a show, I do the like unique New York stuff, or like, just a few things to get the vocal cords going and
Great,
stuff like that.
Odin's Raven.
Yeah, especially with certain sets, because the names of things are so difficult. And then, and then it kind of just fell in my lap. I remember like, I just kind of got like gorilla attached to coverage once at something, and then somebody gave me a big break in Hearthstone, and I did well there. And then I did like a few Magic things, and then I came back and competed again. And then my like real break for like big time coverage stuff was when I started just doing like everything for Flesh and Blood. And then WotC started calling. They're like, "Well, we see you doing really well in this other thing. We want you back." Like we want you back. I call it the Kibler. Like anyone in our, you've seen this a bunch of people, especially with him. If you do really well in some other game or arena that they like, and they see that, they're like, "Wait a minute, you were with us first. Come back," and then bring those people with you. Kind of thing. And like it's a smart business decision. I'm not saying that's literally what happened, but it feels like that. And then, I've just been doing a lot of the stuff lately. Hopefully we get to keep doing it. It's awesome. I love it. It's a good way for me to interact with Magic now, because I don't compete as much, but I still play a ton. I still, if I'm not part of it, I take in coverage a ton. And honestly, I just love it.
So when you were first doing it, when you were getting these opportunities, you said you got kind of drug in on one of them. I'm assuming you were just around a tournament and they were like, "Shit, we're short a guy."
Yeah, exactly.
For a lot of these other circumstances, how much of this, like even when you were doing Hearthstone before getting into Flesh and Blood, when did this become your occupation from just a pastime?
I'd say within the last couple of years. Like, it was nice getting an extra paycheck here or there, and it started out a little bit smaller. It first became my occupation. I did it for Hearthstone. I had to like move across the country to at the time I was living in Las Vegas, and then I moved over to Dallas because that's where our studio was. I did that for like a year. We don't need to talk about that year. There's some good and bad stuff. And then I came back to Baton Rouge, Vegas, then Baton Rouge after that. Took some other stuff a little serious, and then when the Flesh and Blood stuff started happening, I started getting enough gigs regularly with that and then Magic at the same time that I was like able to quit my day job at the time. And go ahead.
What was that?
Oh, I worked for a firm. Like I just did, like typical like middle-aged white guy stuff. I would wear a suit, go in and talk to people about money and stuff, and it was awful. I did not like it at all. And then the pandemic hit too, so that was really bad too. So like my job kind of like fell apart, and then all this started happening coming out of the pandemic. I started getting a bunch of gigs for Flesh and Blood, and then a bunch of gigs for Magic, and I was making a little less money overall, but I was way happier overall.
Yeah.
And I had more, and like I have free time to myself. I'm not working 40 hours a week and then stuff like that. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the amount of like time and effort you put into it outside of the events that people see us on is a lot higher than a lot of people would assume, staying up to date on things. But when you're actually working, it's just a ton of work in a small amount of time. And I like to be able to like go play a round of golf, or like, do anything else around my house, or anything with my free time that I get to do. Go hang out with friends, watch a baseball game, as baseball season just started and I'm the biggest fan in the world. And it just kind of became a thing from there. Like, I mean, I still do a few other things on the side as well. I would obviously like more money, yay capitalism, but I mean, it's paying the bills and I'm having a good time doing it.
So when you said you went from, how did you get involved in the Hearthstone scene and then the Flesh and Blood? Like, I understand them, you've had success in the Magic state. It's always good to get a, kind of an expert witness. And so you kind of get to fulfill that role incidentally. You've done it a time or two, so you can be trusted. I get why they pull you in. But how does the Hearthstone and how does the Flesh and Blood fit into this?
All right, these are two funny stories. I might get a little long here. The Hearthstone one was pretty serendipitous. A friend of mine, this is how long ago it was. It was on Skype and not on Discord. A friend of mine calls me on Skype. He's like, "Hey, have you seen this new game that's getting popular from Blizzard, Hearthstone?" And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of it. I think it's great. At the time, I had qualified for the next Pro Tour and was like practicing that. I was like, I can't pick up another game right now because, like most of us, I'm obscenely obsessive about things. So if like I get into a new game, I'm not going to practice Magic, right? So, but he and I sit there and talk for 45 minutes, and we have like a good banter. We're a good back and forth. This guy does coverage for a lot of games. He's like a voice actor. He's amazing. Like he blows me out of the water with how talented he is. And so what I didn't know was that in the room with him was somebody that was like directing that show, or he heard our call or something like that. And he heard our interactions up, and he was like, that guy. He's like, you guys have a great rapport. So they gave me like a tryout, flew me out. I crushed it, apparently, I guess. And so they hired me for Hearthstone. And then
how long
Flesh and Blood stuff, it was really funny.
You said you moved to Dallas to do that one, right?
Yes.
How long were you doing that one as your like day job, like clocking in, clocking out?
It was under a year. We did like one season of the show, and it was like months and months and months. So probably like 6 or 7 months total, because I had to get there. We had to like practice and do all stuff, because it was like a $2 million studio. It looked like a newsroom. Like we had like the big ridiculous cameras. We had a jib, it's one that moves the camera up in the air. We had like a full control room. Like literally, I felt like I was on the set of a movie. Like we had all the things you would think of. It was trial by fire too, because I went from doing like very grassroots stuff of like I sit there with a mic in front of me. There's like 4 people working on this thing. We have like $100 budget to this thing. Like we had like UFC sponsoring us and like Monster and stuff. And they were like, look, don't cuss, don't say anything bad. Like literally our commercials was like what was it, Ronda Rousey was like the big UFC thing at the time, the big draw. It was before Conor McGregor, and like it got all serious and all this stuff. So all that was going on. And like I had a contract, like a real contract. I was getting paid, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it was. I had like corporate housing, they moved me out there and stuff to it. And then it didn't go as well as they had planned. There was a lot of other stuff going on, obviously. And we didn't continue after that. My contract wasn't renewed. And then that ended. I ended up like, there's some years in there where I started doing.
After that ended, are you the kind of person that was like, oh, whatever, I had fun while it lasted, or did that kind of like tank you a bit?
Both. I mean, it took me a little bit. It like slowed down my momentum a little bit, because like I did get other offers, I did get other gigs, I did some stuff in Hearthstone for a while, but it like just slowly petered out, because like you're only as good as like the last time people saw you, and it's like an object permanence thing. If they don't see you doing stuff, they like forget you exist.
So after that time with them directly came to an end, how much were you kind of hustle and grinding to get in, like to like stay in that sphere?
Not a lot, probably not as much as I should have. It was more like I just got offers and I was like, oh, this will be easy, I'll just keep getting offers. And it slowed down, and I kind of like learned more of the intricacy of the business of like, you kind of got to go out there and like make some stuff happen, and like, there's a fine line on that. You can't just like generate something out of nothing, out of thin air. But like, I learned some of the hardships of the business of like, you can't just expect things to fall into your lap, even though that's a lot of what happened in my career. And then
for somebody who would be interested in that, how would you, looking back, see what you did that worked and what you learned you kind of, in quotes, should have done? Like, what do you think the kind of correct model is for someone who finds himself with a little bit of success and wants to continue it in that kind of space? Like, how would you recommend or think to kind of hustle up and drum up, business contracts and opportunities?
So it's weird to say that now, because I do think that we've had a small bubble burst in the last like year or two. There's like way less money in quote unquote esports or this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to deter anybody, but I'm trying to have you have realistic expectations if that's something that you want to do. Honestly, just take gigs as they come, but be reasonable with yourself. Like, don't work for free, unless it's like your very first thing ever and you're trying to get some exposure type thing. But exposure is a real gritty word in this environment. But yeah, just like stay on top of things, like constantly be like, and not to the degree where you're bothering people, but like, seek out new opportunity, look to see what you can help, look to see what you can do and learn from it. Because I had the unfortunate / fortunate thing of a lot of stuff fell into my lap. I got, I went up to the top of the stuff really fast, and I didn't learn how to. It's like as if like you're in school, right, growing up, and because this is what happened to me. And you always do well because like you're a pretty smart guy, like you're doing well in school, and then you get to like high school or college and you realize, I never learned how to study.
Yeah.
And
Very
now
much
I'm
that.
screwed because I don't have this base to go on. It's kind of like that. Like, you need to learn the minutia and stuff through it. So like, it's hard for me to tell you exactly what you should have done because I didn't do it. Like, but I'm sure there's steps along the line that, like, learn how to write a solid email to people, and
What?
yeah, and how
You
to
don't want to
ask,
start
like,
just say, "Hey, it's up."
yeah, yo, sup, I talk good, want to comment on your show, like, kind of thing, and yeah, it's, if you've heard people talk about being actors or anything like that, like, I'm not saying it's like Hollywood, but like, you have to fail, you have to go through a lot of stuff, you're going to be told no a lot, and then eventually, if you keep trying and you're good at what you do, you will break through and you will get more opportunity.
Yep.
To answer one of the earlier ones, the flesh and blood stuff is actually pretty funny. So we're coming out of the pandemic. I mean, we're not really out of it. You get what I'm saying? When stuff's coming back to normal.
Masks are being reduced in necessity.
Yes. And I get a message from Jeff Foster. And some people know this name, some people don't. He's behind pretty much everything. Like, if you've ever watched a show, it's a very good chance that Jeff Foster helped produce that show. And he and I have a good relationship. And so he messages me and he's like, "Hey, have you played Flesh and Blood?" And I was like, no, but all my friends are playing it and they say it's great. And he's like, "Okay, there's an event in 3 weeks in Las Vegas. It's a Grand Prix level event. They need a commentator for it. Would you be interested in it?" Here's a funny side effect. He's like, when they were coming in, it's everybody who worked on Flesh and Blood, they're all former Magic people. And so they were like, "We want a Marshall Sutcliffe."
Yeah.
So they wanted their own version of Marshall Sutcliffe. So like, apparently I'm Marshall Sutcliffe light. But
well,
like,
yeah, you're about you're like, what, probably 50 to 100 pounds lighter and a foot shorter.
Yeah, he's like 6'6" or something like that. Yeah.
He's a cyclops with 2 eyes. He's like fucking huge.
Yeah. He's literally just like better than me in every way. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, they're like, can you learn this game in time to do this? We'll pay for everything, obviously. And like, he told me what the gig paid for the weekend. And I was very interested in working at that rate. At first, it started as a paycheck.
I can work with this.
Yeah, I can work with this amount. Like, I did not haggle, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I was like, okay, that's
You're
enough.
Like, can I sign right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it binding?
And so in my mind, I'm like, yeah, man, how hard can this be? Like, I'll just download the online client, their version of Arena. I'll be the best player in the world in like 2 days. I'll just play for 12 hours a day, 2 days in a row, because I can do that. I'm crazy like that.
Yeah.
And it'll be easy. Boy, was I wrong, by the way. Like, there's no online client. I got hit by a hurricane during this time and lost power for a week. But I ended up like doing well enough on the first show that like halfway through day one, he's like, "Hey, do you just want to do the rest of them for the rest of the year?" Because they were doing 4 in the span of like 2 months. And so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I signed on for all of them, did all of them.
Is this while you were still working at the kind of like banking firm thing?
Yeah, I was kind of, I was on my way out. Like, I already knew that I was quitting and trying to do something else. And this kind of like,
oh, it's good timing.
Yeah, again, just fell into my lap, right? So started doing a bunch of the Flesh and Blood stuff, and then the same people who were doing the Flesh and Blood stuff, there's a lot of crossover of Magic behind the scenes. Some of them are like, "Hey, like, we need somebody for this." Like, the RC started, the regional championships are like, "Hey, we need somebody for this." And so I was like, "Yeah, I can do that. I'm free those weekends." So I started doing that. I got emails from Wizards. I won't name any names, but they'd just be like, "Hey, we've seen your work on quote unquote other games." Like, they wouldn't name the games. and we like it. Do you want to come do stuff for us? And I was like, "Yeah, like, absolutely." And I'll tell you this, another piece of advice, kind of tying this into the, if WotC asks you to do something, if you're capable of doing it, do it. Don't tell them no. Because like, if you start telling them no, they'll move on to the next person, and the next person does it remotely well. You're not getting that opportunity again.
Yeah. You have one shot to grasp the hand.
And I don't mean that in any kind of like shitty or bad way. Like, it's just, that's just the way business works, or show business, or whatever you want to call it. Like, you've got your opportunity, take it, run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you see as you kind of, have all these things fall into your lap, you get to do this awesome thing? What do you see your dream involvement with this passion of yours of coverage like amounting to? What do you hope it becomes?
I hope it's something I can do for a while, honestly, like, and just keep doing it, because like I said, I really enjoy it. I'm okay with it being, my main thing that I'm doing. I wouldn't mind being a little more in front of the camera at the Pro Tours. I'm in front of the camera at practically every event but that, and it's mostly because their crew is awesome that they have
Yeah.
like who would I replace? There's you know what I mean? Like they're all just so good at their jobs.
Yeah, you're like the number one alternate on the Chicago Bull, like the 96
Yeah.
Bulls. You're like, I get why I'm not on the floor, but I would like to be on the
Yeah.
floor.
And like that's actually a really good example. You know, we've had this come up multiple times. It actually happened to the Arena Championship this weekend where, you know, like a lot of these shows, I'm specifically this one job, but I'm also like the number one alternate. I'm glad that you made that joke because it's actually true because I can do everything. And we've almost had it happen at like multiple shows. Like I remember one of the Pro Tours, somebody that was involved on camera, like got injured. I'm not gonna like say any like personal stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they were almost unable to do their task one of the days, so I was gonna step in. We've had another one where someone who was remote casting, their whole neighborhood's power went out, so I had to like stand in. And then, you know, yesterday's with the Arena Championship that I just did. Normally I just do interviews, but I actually got in the booth and did like the draft and then draft rounds because I play a lot of limited and they needed someone to take over for the limited rounds. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I can do this. Also, it's a great showcase of talent. So anytime I can have a chance to show that I can do this, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So sorry. So just to answer that, I would love to be doing it more and for the next foreseeable future, you know, kind of like, you know, you think of like some of the greats, you know, like BDM and some of these guys that have either been in it or did it for, you know, 10, 15 years. Until I don't want to do it anymore, I would love the opportunity to keep doing it.
Hell yeah. So is there any kind of friction between you doing other games while you work for WotC? Like, are you still able to do the Flesh and Blood thing, even though they won't say the name out loud?
No, absolutely not. And I don't think they won't say the name out loud. It's just funny that they said it like in the thing.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So that you could to continue expanding your wings, doing other games. I assume doing other like Magic tournaments if you were available. Like there is no, you're not caged by this awesome experience. You are still, you know, you get to fly all around,
branch out. Yeah. No, I don't think so. It's never come up. I've never even been like, you know, warned. Like in no way has it ever been a thing. I haven't done a Flesh and Blood event in a while now, and I don't know if I'll do another one in the future. They seem to have moved on for me, which is completely fine. That might have sounded bitter, and I didn't mean it to. But no, you know, they have a new crew that's like younger, hungrier, and better at the game than I am. So like, I've actually watched some of their broadcasts since, and those guys are awesome, like really, really good and stuff. And it's I'll tell you this, man, it's hard. Like when you're doing multiple games, like the vernacular is different between the two. Like I can't tell how many times, like, you know, I would do a ton of Flesh and Blood stuff, and someone would have their resource thing is literally called resources. And like I just called it mana like multiple times, you know? Or just some little thing like that, you know, like something would go back and forth, you know, between the two, and like your brain has to like switch off or switch on to that kind of thing. So it's daunting, but no, I don't think either one of them ever had a problem with the other one. In fact, the only time it's ever come up has been into the contrary of this is not a problem. You know, it's okay that you're doing this kind of thing. And thankfully they never overlapped the same weekend, though I did have one where I did a pro tour for Flesh and Blood. I flew home. I was home for less than 24 hours. I like did my laundry. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I woke up the next morning and flew out to do a pro tour for Magic the Gathering.
It's a nice little turnaround.
Yeah, and I had to learn 4 formats for that. My brain was mush.
So, like when you're seeing people like the kind of new guard for Flesh and Blood or these great talent, you know, the Chicago Bulls of commentating that you're, you know, kind of in the background of at the moment, do you get hungrier when you see this, or do you find yourself getting kind of, I don't want to say complacent, but you're like, oh, you know, I'm glad they have the talent that's better than me doing this? Or are you kind of thinking like of a competitive player of being like, fuck, I need to train in the off season?
Yes, like yeah. I find myself getting hungrier. Like I try not to get complacent. That's a good thing, because like I definitely have in the past. I've like rested on my laurels, you know, been like, oh, I can do this. I don't need to practice as much. I don't need to do, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like where's the motivation for Jordan to get better? I'm not saying I'm Jordan, but like, where's the motivation for LeBron to get better? Like, it takes a special kind of person to keep pushing for 18 years when you've reached the pinnacle, right? And I think a good way to talk about it is like, I don't ever think of the fact that like, or think of myself as like, oh yeah, I'm the best at this, you know, kind of thing, because I know I'm not. You know, like
Mhm.
yesterday, I literally was working with Cedric Phillips, and it was just like I was actually nervous. I had never worked with him before, and he's the goat. You know,
Yeah.
and so telling I talked to a couple of my friends about it, and like was like learning limited, and I was like, man, I got to make sure that I can bring it this weekend, because like if I don't, it's going to be very like noticeable that I am not as prepared as Cedric Phillips, or not as good as
Yeah.
Cedric Phillips. So while I am a lazy person, I mean, we kind of all have our lazy moments.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and this is another thing we can go back to, like how to help people that are trying to get into this, is like stay up on the stuff, um, stay up on your craft, be really good at it, and like try to stay as knowledgeable as possible, because I, I don't know if everybody at home can notice, but I notice myself whenever I'm watching any broadcast, whether it be sports, esports, card games, whatever. If someone doing it hasn't done the homework, hasn't put in the work, or is quote unquote phoning it in, you usually can tell.
So, speaking of that, how much time when preparing, like, so a cast, like, your average cast for a tournament is going to be 2 to 3 days. So it's
Mhm.
like, say, 2.5 days. What, like, you're going to be on the floor for 12 to 14?
Yeah, something like that. RCs, like day one of RCs can be 16 hours, but yeah, let's just say
Yeah.
12 plus.
So you're looking at about roughly 30 hours of work. How much time are you spending before that in the weeks prior prepping, learning the format, learning the cards, looking in a mirror and saying the cards, or, making sure the pronunciation of pithing needle is that, not pithing needle, or,
Sure.
which would have you.
Infinite. It just depends. Limited is the most grueling, especially for like if we're the first event of it. So like for a pro tour, I will literally try to draft dozens upon dozens of times, and I'm not being hyperbolic there. Like I'm going to do 30, 40, 50 drafts of an event. Arena is great for this, right? I can just burn through them. I
So
have
for those who don't know, draft is a format of Magic where you take 3 random booster packs, each containing 15 cards. You go through a process, you select cards, and then you make a deck that you play with.
Yep. And the biggest thing about that is just knowing what all the cards do by looking at them, and then knowing their names. And
Yeah.
one thing that we do, Frank Karsten and somebody else have made a great program by this. I have literal flashcards for every set, where they have a
Hell
program
yeah.
where I can pull it up on my phone or my computer, and the card will come up and the name will be blotted out. And sometimes the text will be blotted out. And I have to know if like I'm like, oh, that's Assassin's Trophy, or that's they went that way, or something like that. And I can click if I
Hmm.
got it right or wrong. I can just go through this. And I will do this for hours whenever I'm just sitting there
Hell
not
yeah.
doing anything, and like memorizing stuff. And then
Grade school learning coming back strong. Let's
yep.
go.
And then like I can show you stuff like this, like just the arena championships. Go back to that. We had 32 players in that. For that, the week before, they literally like whenever the deck lists are in, they send us those. But the week before, they send us like information on every one of the players, how to pronounce their names, things about them. It's like like we literally get dossiers of like I have like your FBI files. You know what I mean? Like, and so you have to like learn the people. And it depends on exactly what your job is for that weekend, because you can kind of tailor it towards that exactly.
Hmm.
But yeah, like we're doing a lot of stuff to keep up. And then when it was 2 games, God, I felt like I was putting in 40 hours a week technically, especially the weeks leading up to the event.
Yeah.
And I would just go to events and either play in them or bird events and watch. I watch a lot of coverage myself of other people doing stuff, because I learn a lot that way, like through osmosis, I guess. You kind of like you learn it that way, because I do better than just sitting there trying to memorize something and staring at it by playing with the card
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So just tons and tons of hours.
When you were doing that, did you feel more like a fighter who stayed in shape in between bouts? Or were you somebody who kind of, all right, that tournament was done. I've got a couple weeks before I need to start prepping for the other one, and just, kind of disconnect. And then 2 weeks prior, just get hot and heavy into it again.
For Magic, I felt more like a fighter that always stays in shape, and then for all the other games, more of the one where like I've got like I'm done with this event. I don't have one again for like 2 months, so like for a month, I don't have to like stare at stuff. Like I
Yeah.
can go play around with golf. Like I could go take a vacation. Kind of thing. Magic has been more prevalent in my life, I think, and I have a better. Also, Magic, man, like I just have a better like understanding and
Yeah. You
like
played it more
more.
than all the other games combined, probably.
Yeah, like I have a dearth of knowledge to pull from, so that makes that easier, because I have a better base for those
Yeah.
games. The ones in which I'm like coming from nothing, like like Flesh and Blood or Hearthstone, I definitely had to like dive headfirst into the deep end and stay there.
So how much? So this is your day. This is your this is your job, do you like of the amount of money now that you're just doing Magic, right? You don't have anything on the veranda for Flesh and Blood or Hearthstone, right?
Yeah, it's just Magic right now.
So you said that this is your full-time job. What percentage of your income comes from just doing these shows?
Over half, probably like 2/3. Just depends on how my investments do on the year, and then
Okay, so the rest
yeah,
of the time you're just messing with the market.
yeah. Sometimes that I go in and out of this. Like last year, I was doing a little bit. I used to play a lot of poker. I was a professional poker player for a long time, and if I'm like into that, then depending on how well I do that year, it could be a very small amount. It could be a very big amount of my
Yeah.
income of the year and stuff like that. So it just matters what else I'm doing, but it's a very large portion. Yeah.
So how much of the year are you broadcasting? Like how many days do you think out of the year are you broadcasting
That I'm
coverage?
actually physically doing the job.
Yeah.
Not as many as you'd think. I might do 12 to like 16ish gigs a year, and they're generally of actually physically doing it 2 to 3 days a piece. But like for pro tours, they get almost a week from me. I usually fly up on a Wednesday and fly home on a Monday because like Thursday and Friday we're like prepping for the event, doing all the pre-show stuff,
Yeah.
doing dry runs, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're doing the event, and then Monday I have to fly home. But like, I get paid for those days. You know what I mean? Because like
Sweet.
they know that
Yeah.
on a day that I'm traveling or whatever, like they get my day.
Yeah, they're not penny pinching you, pretending like
Right.
yeah,
No,
you
Watsy's
show up
awesome.
and then
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'd say probably under 100 days a year, but like over 50 of like
Yeah.
actual physically doing the
Yeah.
job. But then obviously there's other days where I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you're just
draft
like
17
prepping.
times today.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So if you're talking about working with Cedric Phillips and like the Brian David Marshalls of the world, if there was someone that you could work with or collab with in this space, who would you want it to be?
Patrick Sullivan. Haven't worked with P. Sully yet, and I would love to be the play-by-play to his color because
I like just leaving it at that word is perfect.
yeah, because yeah, he's obviously a goat too, right? He's one of the greatest of all time. But there's this thing about P. Sully that I'm not sure and I don't want to say like the average because like it sounds almost derogatory to say, but like that most people don't notice. Like when it comes to if you follow him on social media, it comes to his Twitter or him talking about Magic on a broadcast or anything like that. So, P. Sully never wastes a word. Literally everything he says, like 97% of everything that he says is perfect. There's no extra superlative word anywhere. He doesn't go down the rabbit hole, whatever. Also, when he's funny, he's so funny, right? He's not goofy, right? Like he doesn't just say stupid stuff, make noises, like whatever. That's not his thing. It's not my thing either. Like I'm pretty buttoned up mostly when I do it, and like every now and then I'll drop in a little thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way that I do it. I approach it from, I grew up watching Sports Center, so I approach it from like, the college football guy with the mic in front of him, right? And I love that when he's funny, he's so funny because like, comes out of left field a lot of times when he does it or whatever. But if I could work with anybody, it would be Patrick Sullivan. Or I've one other person and I say Patrick Sullivan mostly because I haven't worked with him. And one other person that I love to work with the most, who I've only worked with a little bit, is a man named Mitch Leslie, or most people might know him as Uber Shouts. He actually won Broadcaster of the Year at the Esports Awards this year. He does he does some Flesh and Blood. He was going to do Magic right before the pandemic, but like that stuff got kind of messed up. He was like Overwatch League, does a lot of Valorant and stuff, but he and I are very close friends. He is a unbelievable talent, and he has so much energy when he does this that it's contagious, and it actually brings you up a level from what you normally do. Yeah, it's so awesome.
So it's not going to be apples to apples, but in movies and television, they often show, broadcast and coverage, some of like behind the scenes. What, in your experience, and obviously, it's going to be a comparative because this is like big Major League Sports versus, medium-sized esport, tabletop, TCGs. What do you think they get correctly and incorrectly about your occupation as a general rule?
So a lot of it gets what's the right word? When Hollywood takes on something, they kind of like they have this like romantic painting of it. Like one of the ones I like whenever I tell people that I was a professional poker player, they're like, well, for one, they didn't realize it's different than blackjack, and they talk about the movie 21.
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, you like count cards, and I'm like,
No.
I'm like, the way that movie portrays that, it makes it look like it's just like this little simple thing that you do for like an hour and it's good. I'm like, this is like years. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I think they just kind of like over dramatize things. Like, we're just people doing a job. And so like when the camera's off, we're all just like chilling, looking at our phones, getting ready for the next thing.
Yeah.
It's not this big movie star production type thing, even though sometimes it can feel and look that way. I mean, I think they get it right overall where like we're just human. We're just doing this thing or whatever, but like yeah, I don't know how to answer this too much without going for like an hour. You know what I mean? Like in the every little thing, but I think they do a pretty good job of conveying.
What are some of the standouts on either end of the spectrum, whether being not hypocritically, but just like hilariously wrong or surprisingly right?
Okay, the existential dread part of it, like like the lows of it, right? That like we're just doing this for and look, we get paid pretty well. I'm not gonna say that overall, but like any of the gigs that aren't the big gigs, like you don't get paid super well. It's a pretty thankless job.
Sure.
Like production, like, hey, great job or whatever, but like pretty much the only thing that like I get, like I got talked about on social media over the weekend, and I wasn't like named right away, but it was just like someone was like, "Oh, I wish we had like a real expert in the booth for this kind of stuff." Someone that's like only does this stuff, and it's like it's a pretty thankless job. So like, it's kind of in the way where, when you see like restaurant and movie reviews, where like the only people who take time to write anything about this are when they complain.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's never like, "Oh, this was awesome, 4 stars." Like. And look, I'm not looking for that. I don't need that self-validation. And like, I care what people think when they're watching the show, but the real opinions matter are the people who write my checks. They like me and I'm doing what they want. And like, there's obviously not like just everyone on social media being like, this guy sucks, like, then I'll keep getting gigs. I'm doing what I'm supposed to because, and that's a part that gets under dramatized when people see this stuff is like, how much we work on these things and do certain things with it, right? Because they're like, hey, this is the kind of thing that we want to convey with this, or this is kind of how we want this to go in a certain way. And people at home think it's one way while we're trying to do a different thing, right? And they're like, oh, well, why don't they do this? Or why do they just talk about this? I'm like, well, that's the notes we got. Like, that's the way we're supposed to do it, kind of thing. And, like to go further what was said, about the expert thing, it's like, yeah, look, I could go into this like expert diatribe of like draft and go down to the minutia of like every single little pick and completely dissect it, right? But like that's good for like 50 people watching out of like the 50,000 that tune in over the weekend. Like I'm there to convey what's going on to the average Magic player who is not a Pro Tour level player, just to be honest, And so I just try to do my job the best I can. Hopefully people like it. And I was gonna say, like, I think overall, if you see any kind of media representation of it, they get it mostly right. On the other end, maybe like we're not celebrities in any way. Like sometimes it makes them look like they're larger than life, and we just kind of aren't. So,
what would you say is the biggest misconception about coverage by the wider world? What do people like think you do or think they know about what you do, and they're just hilariously wrong?
This is a good one. I'll use some other people's examples because this happens with me too, especially being play-by-play. They think that we're dumb or that we don't see stuff or don't know stuff. And look, I'm not saying I'm smart and that I'm not dumb, but like here's a really good example because Marshall Sutcliffe, we mentioned him earlier, just such a stud at his job, right? He's so good. But every now and then he'll ask a question, right? He'd be like, hey, like, why did they do this? Or is this card good? He'll say it in some other flowery language or whatever, right? To his co-caster, who is the color commentator, who's there to like, get the in-depth stuff. And people in chat will be like, how does Marshall not know this? Like, obviously it's this. Like, how does he not know that this is the way this works? It's like, he knows.
But he knows that you don't know, and he's asking on your behalf.
Yeah, it's like when you're play-by-play, it's like you're the Dwayne Wade to LeBron James. You're supposed to you're Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan. You're supposed to alley-oop them. Like, you're supposed to set them up to sound smart and stuff. But that's not my job, right?
Well, also, I mean, isn't it also like they're supposed to be a stand-in for the everyman? Yeah, like they're supposed to ask the question that they're not going to filter through the chat and find, but that people are thinking at home. Yeah, like he's asking the question that he knows a good amount of the audience wants to know the answer to, but effectively can't ask it.
Yeah. Here's a good example. Whenever like SCG was doing coverage a lot, I'm sure you watched it. Everyone did, right?
Yep.
When Cedric and P-Cell are doing it, you could listen to them and not watch it and be pretty up on what's going on in the game.
Yep.
And that's what play-by-play is supposed to do. We're supposed to just walk you through it, ask questions, talk, like point out what's important, and then give them a chance to say why. And so I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions. People just think that like we don't know the answers to a lot of the questions we're asking.
Yeah. That you are as stupid as you sound. That they just picked you off the street and they're just like, here, sit in and ask questions on the things you don't understand.
Yeah. And then like, here's another thing too. Sometimes we'll miss things, right? And sometimes we do. We just actually miss it. But we don't have time to talk about every single thing, or we don't want to go down every single rabbit hole. And so we'll try to give the overall picture instead of the little things. And we can't cover every single thing that happens, you know? And like some people are like, oh, I can't believe they didn't mention this while it was going on or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or like we're going over some other thing while that's going on. And then that moment has passed. You know, we're not supposed to like back up too much. So it's a hard balance to get right. And we're always striving to get it right. And more often than not, we get it mostly right, I think is a good way to put it. So
what would you say on the flip reverse is your favorite non-obvious aspect? The thing that people don't know about that you just revel in?
How difficult it is. Like people think it's easy and it's extremely difficult. And like,
in what ways is it difficult where people think it's easy?
So when I'm sitting there doing this, like, you know, the average broadcast, let's say you and I are doing this, right? We're sitting next to each other we're supposed to watch this game and talk about it, right? And like what's important and what's not. So while that's going on, you and I are talking about this. We're looking at a screen and we can see what people at home see. So we have to see all the information, talk about all that at once, right? We have somebody talking to us in our ear about what's going on. Like, hey, this is coming up next, like blah, 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 this, blah, blah, that. You usually have some kind of computer program with you with like 100 people like doing stuff. There's stuff going on in your peripheral vision as well. Like people are walking around doing a whole bunch of stuff. There's multiple cameras. So like when you and I are talking to the camera, you know, you hear in your ear like camera 1, camera 2, camera 3 or whatever. And you have to like look to that one, right? Yeah. You've got other things going on. There's just so much going on. And you're supposed to be talking about this little thing. And you have to stay in that moment, in that groove. And like you can't lose track of that. And the first like dozen times you do it, it's daunting. There's so much going on. And people think it's literally you show up, put on a headset, sit down, talk about the stuff, go home. And there's so much prep that goes into it, so many little things that go into the actual doing of the job that it seems easy and it's extremely difficult.
So lastly, before we close out this, in many lines of work, there are secret terms that are only used by those who work in it. In coverage, what are some of your favorite little kind of lexicon bits?
Do you know what vamp means?
I would imagine it means to kind of like if you're vamping up someone that you're kind of like, you know, kind of gassing them up a little bit, you're giving them kind of like giving them a nice layup for a slam dunk or, you know, kind of bringing energy back into it.
It can be that for sure. Like that's a good guess. It's mostly meant where, let's say you and I are doing a broadcast and something in the back has blown up, not literally blown up, but like, you know, something in production is messed up and we can't go to commercial, but we need to fill in 5 minutes.
Yeah. You need to just shoot the shit.
Yeah, that's called vamping. They're like, hey, we need, like in your ear, you'll be like, vamp for 5 minutes, please. Yeah. And I've had to do this for as long as 20 minutes before.
Jeez.
And that is not easy.
No.
Yeah. So vamping is one. I'm trying to think of any other terms. Like, I mean, we just kind of, it's not like old school news stuff anymore. Like, I'm sure there's some stuff that I'm missing and not thinking of, but that one came to mind right away.
Hell yeah. All right. While we continue to vamp and change subjects from the lovely to the lousy, Tannon, my guy, what is your preposterous peeve?
Elevator etiquette. I'm like, I don't know why. You know, like you have those little things that like it shouldn't bother you, but they bother you a lot. Like, have you ever just been on an elevator and you're like, you go to the bottom floor, like you're on floor 1 or whatever? Because I have to go in a lot of elevators. I'm in hotels a lot. and the door opens, you go to leave, and there's like people who just like rush onto the elevator and you can't get off. And it's like, you were trying to take up my space. If you just let me get off the elevator, then there's just a ton of space for you to get on. And people are just like, I don't know what it is, but like, I guess it's because they're on vacation or something. They just like don't realize that it should be the person gets off the elevator and then the other people get on. Like, it's kind of like merging traffic as well too. People they just can't do it, you know?
It's impossible. It's never been done before.
I mean, it means that you have to have spatial awareness and care about other human beings. We're not very good at that.
No. So as you are someone that travels a lot, has been in a lot of elevators, and this clearly has a special place in your brain, what would you say are your like 10 commandments, or pick a lesser number if there's not that many, of elevator etiquette? What are the things that to do to not incur the wrath of the one and only Tannon Grace?
The space thing about like getting on and off is a big one. Another one, and like this one's not as easy, but if you get on an elevator and we have like 4 different people getting off in 4 different floors, and you're the highest floor or whatever, you're the last stop, don't stand right in front of the door.
No.
Like, move to the side or get to the
Get
back.
in the back.
Yeah. Or if you're like taking up more space, like you have a ton of stuff, like, yeah, like just get out of the way. Like just stuff like that. Also, like, don't be on your phone talking really loudly and stuff. It's a public space, kind of like, just have some respect for the people around you. I mean, also, this is a very small amount of your life, but we can all make this better for everybody else.
All right. So with those, 3 requisites, do you ever have a moment where somebody decided to break as many as they could and drive you insane?
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely wanted to murder somebody in an elevator before. Living in Las Vegas, I think you're going to run into it a lot more than average, like going through, because it's probably like the most tourist dense place in America, like there in like New York. And just walking through Las Vegas is a thing in and of itself. People just like to stand in the middle of walkways and like look at their phone and look around. I'm like, just move over to the side. It's like the same thing as elevator etiquette. Like, don't stand like right in the walkways. Stuff like that. So those are huge pet peeves of mine.
Any time that any story that is worth regaling us with?
I don't think so. They're all just like very small little things of like, just don't.
They're all
stand
just people that
right
suck.
Yeah, they just suck. Yeah, there you go. And look, I'm not saying I'm perfect and I've never done it myself, because I probably have, but
all right. Well, lastly, before we throw it to a commercial break, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
Oh, the song that I think I'm like most obsessed with lately is I'm a huge Fall Out Boy fan, and their newest album has a song called "I Am My Own Muse," and I probably listened to it like 100 times the first week that album was out.
Nice. Well, with that, we're going to throw it to our sponsors, so Tannon here can have a minute to put on this rubber suit before we get all up in the lightning round. But if advertisements aren't your thing, why not have a listen to "I Am My Own Muse" by Fall Out Boy? Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves podcast, Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a bit. Do you ever find yourself sitting around with an emptiness inside your soul or larger than preferred vacuous space? Would you like to change that? I thought so. Now introducing Stuff. For when you have nothing to do but important things. Stuff. For when you're lacking personality and intrigue. Stuff. When the world has taken a pickaxe-sized chunk out of your heart. Stuff. And if Stuff no longer fulfills these needs, please don't hesitate to look into our life-enhancing product, Addiction. And we're back. Tannon, are you ready to enter lightning round?
The lightning round?
I guess. No. I'm excited. Let's do this.
All right, buckle your seatbelts and keep your arms inside the ride at all times. Would you rather be the best that ever did it, but you never enjoyed your hobby ever again, or enjoy it more than you ever have, but never achieve anything meaningful in the field?
The second one. Enjoy it more than ever have. If I was younger, then be the best ever. In my age now, second one.
Would you rather eat nothing but insects for a year or go without electricity for a year?
Oh, God. Electricity.
Album, shuffle, or playlist?
Playlist.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Would you rather meet an alien or a ghost?
Alien.
Would you rather, in a public setting, dance naked in the snow or walk over hot coals?
Dance naked in the snow. I don't like pain.
Are hot dogs tacos?
Oh, God. No.
Have you ever had a crush on a cartoon character?
Yes.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes. I think we all have, right? But yes, I definitely have.
Would you rather have tentacle arms or kangaroo legs?
Kangaroo legs, for sure.
Which is realer, mermaids or Bigfoot?
I'm gonna say mermaids are more real.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
I've already had the best day of my life, or I'm having the best day of my life.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next?
I win the lottery.
Do you do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Both. I definitely have a really strong inner monologue.
Are you being the person Mr. Rogers knew you could be?
I'd like to think of the last few years, yes. Earlier in my life, no.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Is peeing in the shower normal human behavior or just for those filthy mer people?
I think it's normal human behavior.
Do people who prefer Pepsi to Coke deserve human rights?
I think I'm the wrong person to answer this one, but I'm gonna say no.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
It's cool. It's definitely cool. It's a male soap opera. Come on.
And lastly, or second to lastly, skydiving or deep sea diving?
Skydiving. Even though I'm afraid of heights, the deep sea scares the living crap out of me.
All right, to close it out, could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
No. It's too much. No.
Either way, congratulations, you've survived the lightning round. Woo! Now, before we move on, I, like many guests, would like to now know, what is your favorite food that you couldn't eat 37 of in a 1 hour time limit for $5,000?
Probably just say tacos. I just don't think I could eat 37 of anything, but if I had to answer this, tacos, yeah.
Tacos is definitely the one that is worth trying out anyway.
I think that's the closest one, right? Like, because if you say like burgers, steaks, like you're drawing dead. Tacos are like, I could give it a go, but I think
maybe if they're small and I'm really hungry.
Yeah. Are they street tacos? Because then I could probably get like 15 or 20, maybe. I'm going to be hurting, but like, what was it, 35?
37.
37. Yeah, that's just like, that's like that's Joey Chestnut stuff right there.
So Joey Chestnut numbers.
Yeah, no,
well,
right.
Either way, now as a reward, my Galvin guest, I grant thee a lightning question of your own to be echoed until the ends of time.
All right, I got a good one for you here. Would you rather split the prize or play for it all?
I should play for it all, but I'm gonna split the prize. I have something about my conditioning. I am very much a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush kind of guy.
You're just a lower variance kind of person. No, that's completely fine.
I just also like when you have the opportunity for something and you pass it up for more and then miss that feeling. Ugh.
Yeah, I think some people are just wired differently. They love the gamble. I'm not a big gambler myself.
No, I had a friend who has gone from on this podcast early in life, or early in its life, and he was a Magic player when I first met him. And then as time went on, at one point he's like asked about poker because I had played off and on, dealt for years, and he's asking questions. And the first year I talked to him, I was like, "You're going to be professional at this." And he goes, "No." And then it's like, because he was the guy that at a tournament where it's like, "Would you like to split or play for it all?" I'd be like, "There's literally back then when I knew him in the San Francisco Bay Area, there was a community of people that play a certain deck in a certain format. And they had this saying at tournaments, no splits, kill them all."
Yeah.
Where most people would be like, "Oh, let's split the pies and everybody can go home and have a nice day." There's like, "Can we play for more?" Like they just like undaunted, unafraid. And, if they lost, they were like, whatever. They never, at no point was they ever like, "Man, I could have made more." It's like, this was the correct play, but just didn't go our way today. So yeah, I don't have that. To the Storm players of the Bay Area, I salute you, but not me.
Would be Storm players.
Yeah, of course, of course, it's Storm players.
It's like Storm players and Amulet players. Those are like the ones that pop into my mind.
You're talking about the same community twice, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right, as we come to a close here, my friend, anything you want to plug, shout-outs you'd like to give, places people can find you or your content?
Yeah, easiest place to find me is on Twitter at the TANNON GRACE, and you'll find a link there to MTG Rants, which is the podcast for Magic that I do with Ross Merriam, where we talk about all things Magic. It's pretty fun. You should check it out.
Hell yeah.
And then pretty much any coverage that goes on, but we'll see what happens year to year.
But you post your links there and they can click them and go there?
Yeah, usually. Twitter is usually the best place to find what's going on with me. Yeah. I'm sorry, X. I'll never call it X. It's Twitter.
Well, thank you, Tannon, for being my guest today, and a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And you, listening at home or wherever you find time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are to your patrons. Sibel Yellow. If you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, if days are numbered and songs are sung, at the end of the day, I think we've all won. So please stick around, because great things have only just begun.